Hey, how's it going? Today I'm going to talk about the stand and knock the camera all over, well, my phone all over the place. There. Okay, so the stand came from a novel by Stephen King. Oh, and speaking of pointing over there, my signs, please notice my signs for the sake of YouTube purposes. Anyway, so yes, gosh, I wrote that so crooked. Oh well. So the stand, I specified what year and studio put it out so that I could differentiate it from the original one, because there was one that came before it. And I did not set up any, like, I didn't. I got the cast right next to me of the 2021, but not the one that came in 1980s or something. I don't know. But I'm going to talk about that one a little bit anyway. I will maybe attach a trailer for it or something if there's one available. So, okay. In the spirit of being happy for what you get, because I have run into this time and time again. The Star Wars movies. Total sidetrack here, but just come along. I've seen every one of them, like the year it was released, and back in the beginning, obviously, in the theater. And so I think I was so happy to have a Star Wars at all that when it came around, I was just glad to have it, because at the time there was no internet. And even though I lived in Hollywood and I did have some advance notice of it because of a business that was near my junior high school that did movie posters, I got to see that it was coming a good 6 months before even posters were out, or the movie for that matter. And it wasn't like it is today where you could just get all kinds of information by typing a few keys. Like, that was not the format. So you had to wait longer. It was harder to get information. Like, I suppose I could have gotten a lot more information if I would have looked at the trades, which I think I did a little bit, because I was like, what is Star Wars? What is that? So that was one way. You could look at Variety or Hollywood Reporter, and just newspapers, like the LA papers at the time. I'm sure they're still excellent, but they were a good source of information for what was happening at the studios. There was few other outlets where you could find like information about something in advance of it being released. And so these days, when I see people that are born like after it came out, whichever of the Star Wars movies it is, and I'm not, that's not a put down or anything. I'm just saying that you've seen it much later under very different circumstances in the world, basically. And so, like, which one was it with the Ewoks? I can't even remember now. But I was just glad there was another Star Wars movie. I was not thrilled with the Ewoks, but the rest of it, like, even the Ewoks was okay because the story with C-3PO was funny. But yeah, it was kind of silly. But that's fine. I was like, whatever. The rest of it was good. So, like, these days, when I see people that see it now, it is old fashioned. It looks dated to me when I, rewatch those older movies. But they're so like mean and judgmental and just like tearing it down. Like, I can think of a couple of channels on YouTube that just talk about Star Wars like all the time, and there is a level of appreciation, but at the same time, they just complain about it and pick it apart, and they have problems with the now Disney holds the property, and they have I agree with this. They have like done weird stuff to it and made it not how I would really prefer it was, but no one asked me. I was not involved in the process, so there you go. But when I knew that Disney bought it, I knew it was going to happen. I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, but I had a good idea, and I was right. And I'm sure a lot of other people have the same thoughts on the matter. But anyway, there's just a lot of complaining, and it's like, yeah, but your whole life is dedicated to it. It's like this weird love-hate business, and I don't know, like when they have so many complaints, I'm just like, damn, you got a camera, or you can get a better one probably. Like, do better. Let's see how yours is better. And then I have to say, okay, moving on. But I mean, this is kind of what it reminds me of with this The Stand, the original version, and me. Because basically my policy is I'm only going to do shows I like. So in the spirit of what I just said, I liked it at the time, although I did have some not reservations, although I did know before it came out that it was coming. I did get to see like some advanced publicity photos and stuff like that, and little reports on television, on the news or whatever. Not a whole lot of information, but because it's based on something, I had a pretty good idea of what it was going to do. And I mentioned this in another video, like my previous one maybe, that I have read the Stand at least 30 times. So I'm very familiar with how the book tells the story. And I knew that all of the details we're not going to get into that first one for sure, because a lot of the stuff that I was talking about before with the two different worlds, pre-internet and post, and everything that came in between, that would make so much of a difference on pretty much any kind of screen filmed project that's released to the public for consumption. Everything has changed. Just the whole world of entertainment basically is different. So back when this came out in like 80 something, I'll try to get it in the information box, the precise date, but I had my mind set on what the characters should look like, and then sort of had filled them in with people that some of whom were actors, some of whom were not. And I really was not very good at separating the actors that they did choose to play the parts. Like the guy that plays Randall Flagg, I just thought, even aside from my own associations with him, I just didn't think he was scary. Just the guy himself, the actor, and then in the role, I just wasn't buying it. So that was kind of a letdown. And then Stu Redman, who was my favorite character in the book, they got someone from one of my favorite shows, Starsky and Hutch, but they got the wrong cop. Like David Soul, for what I'd seen him do, I'd probably seen more of his work before he got to Starsky and Hutch in the past 5 years than I did back then. I wasn't like wise to the fact that, like, pay attention to all of the shows and commercials that you're seeing. You're seeing the same people. They just have different costumes. But I was pretty young, so those concepts just didn't even occur to me. And so I only really knew him from Starsky and Hutch and some commercials. And if they were going to use a Starsky or a Hutch, I would have preferred Starsky, Paul Michael Glaser, but he didn't look right for, well, I mean, he could have. Because I felt like Stu Redman should have dark hair. Anyway, it wasn't, it wasn't working for me. But, I was glad to have this opportunity to see it played out visually, the story. So, I mean, I was like a little unhappy, but I was happy though, because before that, nothing like it existed. I had no opportunity to see a visual representation of this story. So, and this is looking back in retrospect. I remember being a little bit unhappy about it, but I think I must have been pretty darn happy, despite, whatever I had issues with about it. So, fast forward however many blah, blah, blah years later, I'm making another video and I'm talking about it, and I'm thinking about this one on Paramount Plus and that I haven't watched it yet. And I'll tell you, my hesitation right up front was, I don't have a problem that Whoopi Goldberg was in it, but I did not buy her as 108. And also, I watched The View, so she had those white. She had white hair in the stand, so because she's playing a 108-year-old woman. But I also watched The View, so while they were filming, she just had these extensions or whatever it was that made her dreadlocks white at work at The View. So, I mean, that kind of took the magic out of it for me on that level. But that was like one reservation. And then really the other one was like, am I going to be lukewarm about this too? And that is something that you always have to take into consideration when it's a Stephen King story, because they basically have all come from a book of some sort, and how it's going to transfer if you've read the book to the screen, you're going to run into the issues like I was talking about that I was having with the first stand. So with that in mind, I was just like, okay, well, the technology overall is just better today. Like the way actors act is better. The way stuff is filmed is better. The writers are more adept at somehow compacting a huge story into something mini-series size. And wow, that's an accomplishment. So that too, like, that whoever's dealing with the property is going to do their own thing with it, and so expect changes. And I did, and boy, were there some. Like, they moved locations of stuff, and sort of the time that events happened in the storyline differ from the book. And then also, of course, they had to whack off. They had to amputate like whole limbs. They had basically a torso of a story and a head, like what was the father? Well, like the father on the oblongs. But they did a good job, kind of getting all the stuff in. They got like the major stuff, and I knew I couldn't be like a pest with all of the details that I had in my mind. And I really didn't know who was going to play anyone else than the character Whoopi Goldberg played, because I just didn't even look into it until I just watched it like last week. And I was pleasantly surprised. A lot of them I didn't know. I did know Greg Kinnear, who played Glenn Bateman, but when he was wearing the bucket hat, and I knew this was not the case, I just knew that he looked like Martin Mull, but I was like, I knew he was not Martin Mull, but I just couldn't get over it. And then I was like, I know who that is, but the name, it took a while for the name to come to me. I didn't look in the credits, so it was probably like the next episode after he appeared, about halfway in, that I was like, oh, okay, I know who that is. And I like him a lot. I have enjoyed him since he was on The Soup, or I guess it was Talk Soup when he was on. And look it up. And who else? I'm not a fan of Amber Heard. I'm not a fan. I know there was a bunch of Johnny Depp court dirt slung to and fro between them, and it was a big deal, but I didn't. I'm not interested. He's Johnny Depp. I'm lukewarm about anyway, so I kind of had no dog in that fight at all. I didn't and don't care. All I cared about was were the animals okay and were the both of them basically physically okay, because the rest of it, I don't know. I don't care. Excuse me. But I have seen her and not necessarily known who she was until later in a lot of stuff, and she's good. She performs well, as does Johnny Depp. I've seen him in plenty of stuff that I have enjoyed. So take that and put it in your pipe and smoke it, I guess. Anyway, she was really good as Nadine. Like every step of the way, every Nadine part, she did really well. Like I was very happy with that. And then the Stu Redmond character. Well, hold on. Let me go to that last, I think, and then Tom Cullen and Nick Andros. Oh my! The gentleman that played Nick Andros was very good in the role. I was suitably wounded at his part in the story. Pardon. So yeah, but Nick Andros was sort of part of a pair with Tom Cullen, who was the developmentally disabled guy who had a pretty big role in the story, in both versions, in the book and on screen. And he looked like the guy that played him in the earlier version, which I think was on CBS, so it kind of makes sense. It's basically the same company, but it was shoot, what is that guy? He's the voice of Patrick Starfish or Patrick Star on SpongeBob, and I can't remember his name, but he is that guy. He's the actor's not developmentally disabled, but he's big and he's like a tall, or he's probably not blonde anymore. He's probably got gray hair or white or whatever, but and nothing wrong with that. But he was towhead, like white blonde haired when he was young, and totally fit the character in the book. And I mean, he could act like Patrick Star and basically play the guy that, anyway. So, that was excellent casting. I really enjoyed it. And when he did his away mission, he did it so well. Like I was really worried for his welfare at certain points. And then the actor that they had to play Stu Redmond was James Marsden. I think right now everybody loves James Marsden because of that show, Jury Duty, which I've only watched a couple of episodes of. I will probably pick it up again. I have a hard time with the cringe humor because the cringe is over effective with me and I have to take breaks from it. But he's really good in that. I really like him in Westworld. And I don't know, like you never know the actors that you see. You're not seeing the actual person or much of the actual person because they have to be really guarded, and I totally understand the situation they're in and I don't blame them. So what I'm getting at is he comes across in interviews as like a totally nice guy and really like genuine, and people say that about him, but there's industry people that are saying that about him. So I think that comes with certain unspoken qualifications in a lot of cases. I'm not saying it's the case with him because across the board, everyone just says he's really nice, like really grounded and down to earth, and I think not pretentious, and like Chris Pine seems to be the same way. But that is their public persona. But it's also one that he plays the character of often. It's like in Westworld, my God, he could be a brutal killer, but he had to be driven to it. And then the rest of the time, he's like this. He's either like the boyfriend that you totally want, or some of us would just be like, "Oh my God, goody two shoes! I want to pour acid on your head," or whatever. But I like the nice guy one. So, and that's the character of Stu Redman. Like that's for anything else that's going on with him. He's a genuinely nice guy. He cares about people. He's like a service oriented in like he would be like a firefighter or whatever. And he was a vet. He was in the army or whatever, I think they said. So I was pleased with the choice of him as Stu Redman. And honestly, the main cast, which is what I will put in the information box on underneath this video, was really well cast. Like I was very happy. Like they did a race switch with Larry. Can't remember his name now. And I love what they did with the kid Leo. Or sorry. Do they ever get his real? Well, it's in the book that his name's not Joe. It's actually Leo. I think they do get to it right at the end. And, you know, people get taken that I wasn't expecting to get taken, some I knew were going to go. And, like, the guy that played Harold, he was definitely the right kind of, like, creepy, off-putting guy. But it would have been better if he was fat, like he was in the book. But that's not, I guess, a thing that some actor wants to do for a TV miniseries. And I'm glad he didn't do a fat suit instead, though, because you can usually tell. So overall, I would have to say I was pleased with it. And, you know, it's interesting. Every time I started to think about how I was gonna present this, I would think, this is just a progression of thoughts in my little brain. I would think, okay, I want to do a video on, and then I'd like have to pause because all kinds of other stuff besides the stand was trying to jump in front of my mouth first. And right there, it was Paramount Plus. But I don't want to be all in my brain talking to myself. Paramount Plus is this 2020 minis, like an ad in my own brain. So that's what that was right now. But I would try to think about it, and that's what would happen. And then I would be like, okay, stop thinking that way and think about what you want to be thinking about. And so I go back to like, okay, the stand, and start to try and picture it in my mind. And then before I could get a picture, it would be like a freaking ad. I just realized a Star Trek, a Paramount Plus Star Trek would like barge in and like take over, like what I was visualizing, like an ad was intruding. And it was for Strange New Worlds, which was not evident at first because this happened a bunch of times. So I've been thinking about doing this for about a week now. So this has been happening. Like every time I try to think about it, go to try to think about the stand, and a Star Trek jumps in, and then eventually I realize it's Strange New Worlds, and I'm like, dang, I really want to see that. Which is true, and it's coming, but oh my God, you got to horn in like that? And I'm particularly offended that my own brain was doing ads on me. I'm like so irritated with those things now. Can I just say, with ads, here's what I think you should do. I don't know how it's going to work for like a YouTube or a Twitter trying to make money off of ads, but as the user and the consumer, I don't need to see the same ad 50 billion times. Like, for whatever it is, in 1 week, you get to show it for an hour, 3 days a week, during commercial breaks, and not a 7-minute cartoon or not a 7-minute ad. That's just ridiculous. And then, like, if there's something that you're watching, and that's like every company, like, you don't get to just bombard people to death with your stupid advertisements. Not everyone wants what you're selling. Not everyone wants to be interrupted at the crucial moment of what they're looking at with an ad about, here, hey, your butt stinks, put some of my goo on it. Like, no. Designated times, designated length of time, don't go nuts. And if it's a show and there's something you want, we have like Shazam and QR code and all that kind of crap. Like, can't you just like do that yourself? Like, oh, I want that I see in the show, and you can go find the ad because you're able to do some kind of thing with your phone at the show you're looking at, and then go to where the ads are, and we don't all know like all of every product out there, but my God, we know toilet paper and dish soap and trash bags. Like, you don't have to show us the same. My God, my whole life under an avalanche of these idiot ads. I know about the trash. Get out of here with the trash bags. I know. Put it in the ad thing. Like, I don't know why I would need to see an ad for a new ad for Glad bags, but sure, put it in the place where you go look at the ads. Get it out of my show. And that is what I have to say about that. And that is not, excuse me, what I wanted to be the other musings to be about. What am I doing here with time? Oh, pretty good. Okay, so real quick, I just wanted to mention something that I discovered, and it can be taken in a number of ways, but it has to do with, I'm going to say, trust and faith. Now, I don't mean necessarily like in the religious sense, but that is where I would get my wording for what I'm talking about from, for, one source. But it could be metaphysical too, but it all comes down to like God, or the source being the grand creator, the thing that's bigger than all of us that made the everything. So, one of the things that I grew up hearing, because I was raised Catholic, so in those settings, it wasn't so much about it happening in the house, but like in the church and in the school, you would hear a lot about things happening to people, and the way to get out of it is to pray to God or Jesus for help, for help with, whatever your problem is. And you could do that now, today, still, and Spirit appreciates that. But also, you could be an atheist and just be all, oh, the universe was serendipitous and this happened because I needed it and I put it out there that I, like, whatever it is, however you get there, however you get down that road. So, recently I have had a couple of sort of almost rough spots, like you run into some kind of an issue that you can't immediately deal with, or just is like beyond like the scope of your budget, let's say, because those are the scariest things that happen to me anymore, is that some kind of thing happens that's outside of my budget. And that happened recently. because other things happened that had actually nothing to do with my actual money or finances, like land of unforeseen circumstances. So my money got funny the past couple of months, and I wasn't able to immediately deal with it, and that was how that happened. And so things got kind of close and like cliffhanger. Like, what am I gonna do? Because if I don't like deal with this, and I don't have the funds to deal with this right now, I could have a problem with this particular resource that is valuable, and I need to have it continuous, continuously. So I was like, well, you know what? I have done everything I can think of to do. I can't see the point in getting all worried and tied up in knots about it. I'm just going to think about other things and sleep on it and let what happens happen, and let Providence swoop in and save my butt, or leave it, let go and leave it to God, leave it in God's hands, however you want to call it. But I did one of those selections, and I was like, I give up. Like, I'm not going to break my brain over this. Like, consequences are going to happen, then fine. They'll happen, and I'll go from there. And then the next day, in my email, I came across a charge that a company was making, like billing me for it, but it was for something that I had never used. And because there was a record of it, I got like just over the amount of money that I had an emergency for. And then I was able to sort of re-engage my ability to deal with the places and being at the places that I needed to be at to do my money stuff. It just all worked out, and this is the first time that this has happened, that there's been some fuss or cluck, and I've gotten all like, and like just sort of lost control and gotten all frantic. Like, not that I'm like breaking stuff, but just like you feel inside like you're out of control, or you lost control of the situation. And once you get on that roller coaster, it's just like you're sort of chasing yourself on the roller coaster. And because you're on the roller coaster, it's kind of precarious and scary, and you're swooping up and down big emotional hills, and you could go flying off the edge. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was the feeling. And it's always good to sort of disengage from that for your own sanity, for God's sake. So I just wanted to share that little tidbit. I know that people are funny about religious stuff. I'm funny about religious stuff. I am hesitant to engage with it deeply, since I've been able to be disengaged from it for so many years. And I'm not going to go into the reasons why, except to say I did not have the experience where the church, at least, was like molesting and touching me, except for I was getting my butt kicked every day. Like, there was always some reason to physically punish me for something in that place. And it didn't even just stick to the staff. It was like the yard monitors, and then like leaving the school, it was the other classmates. Like, yeah, I ran home so many times from getting my butt kicked. Yeah. So not your typical sort of horrible religious problems, but that's not, if I have a problem with them, that's not really the problem. It's the other stuff with the priest, that's you know but anyway, you don't have to have all of that to apply the knowledge, the skill, the I don't even know if it's as heavy duty as that. It's like so easy to just go, you know what? I got this problem over here that's kind of overwhelming and making me feel horrible. I'm just going to let go and forget about it for a little while. And, stuff's going to happen regardless. And I have learned, or I have found, or both, that whoa, dude, throwing a bunch of stress at it does you no good. Like there's no return from that you want except for you just have maybe made yourself feel more terrible. I know I'm inching away because you know what? I'm done and I'm getting ready to take down my rig here. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Thank you. We almost did it again. Thank you and good night.